Hi, welcome back for another video. Today we've got all the books that I read in April. April was Magical Readathon, so I had my normal Spinner TBR in addition to my spring equinox books that I needed to read for all of my classes. I am in the House of the Arcane and my calling is an Archmage. So for the spring equinox, I needed to read 6 books. So let's go ahead and kick it off with the different classes that I had and see if I was able to read all of my books for spring equinox. So the first class was Alchemy, and that was a book with all capital letters. So I chose the book Frisco by Tejan, and I did complete this. So Frisco by Tejan, this is a book within the Fallen Crest universe, and this is probably like book number 12, 13, 14, 15, something like that. This is a very large universe. Now, this book can be read as a standalone. However, it does have loose ties to the Fallen Crest series. There are some characters in here who kind of play big roles in the Fallen Crest series. So, having some background knowledge and knowing who these characters are kind of gives you a little more insight. You are invested in the story a little bit more because you know who everyone is. You know who all the actors are. So in this book, it's about a motorcycle club. Our female main character, Callie, she lived in this small town. She lives somewhere in the Midwest. I can't remember exactly where. And she got married quite young and moved away with her husband. Well, her husband was a super cheater. Like, we find out in this book that he cheated on her like with 40 or 50 or 100, something like that, different women over the course of their marriage, which, geez. And the final straw for her is coming home and he is having a threesome in their bed. So she gets a divorce and she moves back to her hometown. And she has started working in the local grocery store. While she's working in the grocery store, some of the biker guys come in and cause kind of a ruckus. And she puts an end to this and makes them call their vice president, who is Shane. And she talks to Shane on the phone and basically says, come get your dudes. They're, causing a ruckus in the grocery store. So Shane, who used to be her brother's best friend in high school. So she knows Shane as somebody other than being in a motorcycle gang, club, whatever. And so she knows him as just a regular high school student, somebody that she grew up with. So Shane comes to the grocery store to kind of apologize to her. But of course, now that they're in each other's presence, sparks fly and, there's that instant attraction and, she just doesn't know why, but she has to, she can't stop thinking about him and blah, blah. So ends up, Shane comes to her saying that her brother, who was his friend in high school, did them a favor, and the only thing he's asking for in repayment is to take care of his 2 sisters and his mother. So his mother owns a bar, and the sister works in the bar and would like to have her own hairdresser shop. And then there's Callie. And Callie, her wish is for Shane and the motorcycle club to leave her brother alone. Well, that's not going to happen, because turns out this favor that her brother has already done for the motorcycle club, he hasn't actually done it yet. And it's a pretty big deal. So the motorcycle club can't leave her brother alone. Callie's sister has been hooking up with one of these motorcycle guys. When the whole motorcycle club leaves this town to go to Frisco, which is on the West Coast, which is right next to Fallen Crest, the sister follows them. Well, then Callie's mother comes to her and says, they don't have a very good relationship, Callie and her mother and her sister. So Callie's mother coming to her and asking for a favor is kind of a big deal. The mother asked Callie, hey, can you go get your sister back? Go find her and bring her back. So Callie and her two best friends, they go on this road trip to Frisco to get the sister. Of course, drama ensues. This is a 1% motorcycle club. And there are drug cartels involved and shady dealings and, drug smuggling and gun running and all sorts of stuff like that. So there's lots of bad things that happen. People get kidnapped, people get killed, lots of murder, lots of strategizing, how do we do this? How do we do that? Like, this cartel is trying to do this to us, and the stuff with the president, and the president is in Texas, but they're all the way in California. So there's a lot of things that go on. And underneath all of this is Shane and Callie's relationship and how they know they shouldn't be together, but it's inevitable. Everything ends up getting sorted out after a bunch of drama and a bunch of mayhem happens, and they end up together. But there are a lot of connections between Fallen Crest, since Frisco is right next to Fallen Crest. And so reading it in the universe really added a little bit extra for me. But I love this series. I love Tijan's writing. I ended up giving Frisco 4 stars. Next, we have Art of Illusion. And the prompt for that is book you already planned for this month. For that prompt, I chose What the River Knows by Isabella Banez. So this book was already on my TBR because it has the word river in it, which was my prompt for the yearly Adventures in Eldia. So I just finished this book. It was the very last one that I finished for this month for Magical Readathon. What the River Knows is about a girl, our main female character. Her name is Inez, and she lives in Argentina, in Buenos Aires. And she lives there with her aunt and her two female cousins. And her parents, they travel back and forth to Egypt a lot for about 6 months out of every year. So her parents are gone quite frequently, and they never take her with them to Egypt, and she is pretty resentful of that fact. So right away at the beginning of the book, a letter is delivered to the house in Argentina, and it's from her uncle, who also lives in Egypt as an archaeologist. And this letter from her uncle says that her parents have died. They got lost in the desert and they're presumed dead. So Inez decides to travel to Egypt. Her and her maid secretly plan this trip. She leaves a note for her aunt, and she leaves by herself to Egypt. So after about a month of travel by boat, because this is the late 1800s, she arrives in Alexandria in Egypt. Now, she is met there by somebody that her uncle has hired to help him out with various dealings around town. And this man, he's British, and his name is Whit. So Whit meets Inez at the docks when she arrives and immediately announces that she is already been scheduled and has a booked ticket to be on the next ship out of Egypt and back to Buenos Aires. And as you can imagine, after you've just gotten off a ship for a month and you're being told that you are not wanted and they're going to send you back right away. Hi, pet cow. My kitty cat just came in. She's obviously very angry about this. Sorry if you hear my cat eating. He just walked into the room to eat some lunch. She, through some trickery, actually takes herself without any of her luggage, just the backpack that she has, takes herself and gets on a train to Cairo. So leaves Wit behind and goes to Cairo on her own. She finds the hotel that her parents always stay in. Turns out her parents prepaid, and so she's able to stay in their room for the next couple of months. So she meets back up with Wit, who has all of her luggage, and then she meets with her uncle, who is obviously quite upset because he was expecting her to be gone. He is acting like she is a pain, and he doesn't have time to take care of her. He doesn't have time to worry about her. He has bigger and better things that he needs to do because he is going to be traveling via boat, or it's kind of like a river raft, but super nice, to Philae, which is an island down the Nile River. And Inez is very sly and tricks them and ends up getting on this boat with them in disguise and goes to Philae with them. So they are on this island to find Cleopatra's burial place. And throughout these different adventures, it has been discovered that Cleopatra had some magic. So she, through alchemy, using plants and different medicinal herbs and things around her, can imbue items with magic. So Inez had a ring that was Cleopatra's that had some magic in it. When she put the ring on her finger, that imbued the magic into her, and now she can sense the frequency of that magic. So she is kind of led to Cleopatra's, any place that Cleopatra was, or where this signature is. So her and her uncle and Wit and their archaeological team are going through this dig and trying to find Cleopatra's burial place. And behind the scenes, there's a bunch of other mysterious things happening. We have another character who sneaks onto their camp at night and causes much turmoil. And, you know, Inez isn't sure if she can trust her uncle or not. She's not sure if she can trust Wit or not. And, you know, she's 19, so she trusts people very freely. She believes what they say to her, and, you know, she's young. Of course she does. You know, I was that way when I was 19. I'm sure y'all were too. You believe what people say. You assume that they're telling you the truth, and Inez is no different. So she makes a lot of mistakes and, you know, acts foolishly, but she's young. She's still learning. And so throughout this story, she makes mistakes. People betray her. People lie to her. And, you know, at times for me as a reader, it's kind of frustrating, but then I just have to remind myself she's still learning. She doesn't know these things yet. You know, this is a YA series. She's young. She is now starting to understand the world and that she can't trust everyone. And then we get to the end of the book, and there's such a twist, and it was very shocking and quite upsetting to me when I read it, and I cannot wait to read the next book in this series. So luckily, the next book in this series was already chosen for my May TBR, and I do have that book on the way. So I will be picking that up in the month of May. So What the River Knows, I ended up rating it 4.5 stars. The third book for Aurelium, or class, was Conjuration, and that prompt was a random country generator for the author. So for this book, I spun a random country generator and got Korea. So I picked Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. And I ended up reading this on audio. I actually listened to it while we were driving to and from Orlando to go to Disney for a week. In Pachinko, you are introduced to several generations in the same family. And you start off in Korea and eventually move to Japan. And Japan is where a majority of the story takes place. So you're introduced to many characters in several generations within this family, and it's pretty much their day-to-day life and how they are dealing with being Koreans living in Japan. They are looked down upon, they aren't treated nicely. The Japanese think they're stupid and want nothing to do with them, that they're dirty, they're dogs, they don't want them in their country. The Koreans, they don't have a lot of money. A lot of people won't work with them, won't let them work for their companies. So it's hard for them to find jobs, hard for them to get money. So during World War II is a big chunk in the middle where this story takes place, is during World War II and all of the fighting. One of the men in this story, he is a Christian pastor, which is not a common belief in Korea or Japan. And so he refuses to bow down to the Emperor of Japan during World War II and basically worship him. So him and his other pastor and people associated with their church are imprisoned for several years. So this causes a lot of turmoil, and he's in jail, and the family is bringing him food, but he never actually receives the food. The guards eat all the food, and he comes back, and he's totally, like, after multiple years, comes back, and he's emaciated, and he dies within, you know, a couple of days of returning home. And then you're following him and his wife throughout her story, and how she became pregnant because she was sleeping with this guy who ended up being in the Yakuza. They end up marrying, or no, she doesn't marry the guy from the Yakuza, but she thinks about him for basically her whole life, and constantly he's helping her and his son Noah throughout their lives. So then you end up following Noah and his brother throughout their lives, and them getting married and them having children, and all the turmoil that's happening in this family, and all of the turmoil from being Korean living in Japan and going back and forth to the United States and post World War II and all of that political turmoil as well. Now, I enjoyed this book for what it was, their day-to-day lives, and just, you know, giving some background information and a little bit of history on Koreans and living during this time. So it was very educational. I did learn a lot of things that I didn't know before. However, it was pretty long. I mean, you're following 4 different generations within this family. I think the audiobook was like 18 or 19 hours long, and it just was a little bit long. But I did overall enjoy it. So I ended up giving this book 3 stars. So for our 4th class, it was Spells and Incantations, and the reading prompt was Word from Your Last Book Title. And for that, I read Of Jade and Dragons by Amber Chen. Now, I loved this book so much. It was so good. So we first meet our main female character, Ying, and she lives on this island that is more rural. They're a little bit more poor. They don't have a lot of stuff. It's not a big city, and they are the furthest island from the capital. So in this kingdom, there are 9 islands, and the capital's here, and they're on an island further away from the capital. And her father is the chieftain of their clan on this island. Right at the beginning, Ying's father is murdered. And on the murder, totally destroying her father's office workspace. And he is pulling up books off the shelf, and he's clearly looking for something. So Ying fights him off, and the guy runs away, and she ends up pulling his little identification stone off of his belt, so she has a little bit of a clue. Now, her father isn't quite dead yet, and he gives her some clues and tells her to go to this lamp, open it up, and pull out this journal, and to destroy this journal. Don't read it, don't open it, destroy it. And then he dies. So Ying goes to her brother, who is now the chieftain, and is saying, you know, aren't you going to go after father's murderer? Aren't we going to investigate this? Here, look, I found this token and it has a dragon on it. And this is the symbol for the empire that is across the ocean. They probably came here and murdered their father. Like, what? Why did they do that? And her brother is saying, nope, we're not going to investigate this. Just drop it. Turns out she finds a hidden letter in her brother's office from somebody unknown saying, don't investigate your father's murder or else. So Ying, she decides to go to the capital to try to investigate her father's murder. Well, her father used to be a member of the engineering guild in the capital, and they're the ones that create a bunch of the machines and the weapons for the country. And they have these very cool, I don't know if you can see a little picture up here, of these flying blimps, basically. It's like a blimp top, it's got a ship bottom, and it's got wings out to the side that flap. The engineering guild creates a lot of the technology for the islands. So she ends up traveling to the capital and tries to get into the engineering guild so that she can investigate her father's murder. So along the way, she meets a prince named Yi Yang, and he befriends her. So she has to pretend to be a boy because women aren't allowed in the engineering guild. So Yi Yang sponsors her to be in the engineering guild. So this basically gives her a free pass to go into the guild to train and go to class and be part of the 3 different trials or tests that they have to then become an apprentice in the engineering guild. So this whole time she's pretending to be a boy, but her and Yi Yang are also becoming friendly. And there's an attraction between them, and there's a spark. So we're following her through their classes and through their day-to-day life. She's finding little clues about her father's death and about her father's murder, and along the way trying to navigate her attraction to Yi Yang. So towards the end of the book, she has passed all of the tests and the big climax of the story, and she finds out who murdered her father. And this upsets her so much that she goes back home. She's accomplished all this and she goes back home. So at the end of the book, she's no longer in the capital, and Yi Yang shows up and says, hey, come back. So this book honestly could be a standalone. The way that it wraps up in the end, there's no big cliffhanger, no big questions. It could be a standalone if you wanted to. However, there is another book coming out this summer that happens a couple of years into the future and deals more with the war that is happening between the 9 islands and the empire. I ended up giving this book 4.5 stars because I really thoroughly enjoyed it. The pacing is pretty good. The romance is very, very slow. It's a YA book. I think they kissed like 3-ish times, 4 times maybe. But I'm sure that relationship will progress more in the next book. So I've already pre-ordered the Illumicrate edition of the next book. So that will be arriving this summer. But I really did enjoy this book, and I do really recommend it. The 5th book for Aurelium is Artificery, and that was Check the Time and the title length to match. So I watched G's video about Magical Readathon at 2 p.m. So I had to pick a book with 2 words in the title. So I chose The Fury by Alex McLeodies. In this book, our main female character, her name is Lana, and we're introduced to her, and she is a retired movie star, and she is very beautiful and very nice and sweet and just very nice to everybody, and everyone loves her. And we're introduced to her son Leo and her second husband James. I think his name was James. And we're introduced to her best friend Kate, and then also her friend Elliot, who happens to be narrating this story. So this is a mystery thriller, and it is narrated by Elliot. So Elliot is the one telling you his version of events that happen. We meet all of these characters, and I go way more in depth in the characters in my Magical Readathon reading vlog that I posted last week. So check that out if you want some more details on the characters and their personalities that are introduced in this book. So, turns out Lana finds out her husband and Kate have been sleeping together. So her and Elliot come up with this extravagant plan to bring that relationship out in the open and accuse them of adultery. So Lana invites everyone to her Greek island. Now, her previous husband bought her this Greek island. So all of them, plus her housekeeper cook, go to this island. And Nikos is the caretaker of the island, so he lives there by himself. And through a bunch of different turns of events and things that Elliot is kind of orchestrating, because he's kind of got this underlying plan of how to expose Kate and James. I'm not sure if his name is James. I know it starts with a J. Things don't always go the way that he planned, and extra stuff happens, and you'll get to the end of a chapter and Elliot will say, oh, well, that didn't actually happen that way. I wish it would have happened that way, but it didn't. And this is actually how it happened. And I can see what the author was trying to do here and, kind of create some mystery and back and forth. And, you can't trust the narrator. He is an untrustworthy narrator, so you never know if he's telling you the truth or not. However, the twists and turns in this book just weren't great. I wasn't intrigued. It was pretty wordy, and it's already a short book. It's less than 300 pages, and a lot of it could have been cut out, and I just didn't like the mystery. I wasn't thrilled. I was able to guess most of what was going on. There was a little bit of a twist at the end where I didn't know what was going to happen, but honestly, I just didn't care anymore. So I did not love this book. I ended up giving it 2.5 stars, and, is it worth your time? In my opinion, not really. So I will be unhauling this book at the end of the month, because I didn't really love it at all. So the last book for Aurelium was Inscription, and that prompt was the first sentence challenge. So you pick 3 books and see which sentence you like the best. So for that prompt, I ended up picking A Photo Finish, which is by Elsie Silver, which is the second book in the Gold Rush Ranch series. So in this book, we are following Violet Eaton, who is the sister of the brothers that are in the Chestnut Springs series, which I have not read that series yet. I chose to read Gold Rush Ranch first since it was published first. I really like to read books in the order, like I'm pretty strict about it. So this follows Violet Eaton and Cole, who is the brother of the main male character in the first book. So Cole and his family own the ranch that Violet works on. And Cole is a war vet, and he has seen some stuff. He definitely has PTSD, and he was super affected by the war and everything that happened to him while he was over there. Violet is training to be a jockey, and she had some great success at the end of the first book. And so she's continuing to have success here and training with Dee Dee, the horse, who is the fastest horse that they've seen in a while. He just has some quirks. And so Violet, along with Billy, who was the main female character in the first book in this series, are training Dee Dee and helping him out and helping him be more calm during his races. So Violet ends up becoming injured in a fall during one of these races because a fellow jockey who does not like her sabotaged their race. So luckily Dee Dee, the horse, wasn't injured, but Violet was. So Violet ends up having to move into the main house on the ranch because she can't get up the stairs to her apartment. Well, it turns out Cole has also had to move into the main house on the ranch because he is there from the city to fix one of their other companies that they just acquired and trying to get them up and running a little bit. So they're living in the same house together. And they have a little bit of a funny history that nobody else knows about, that only the two of them know about. So it's them trying to navigate this weird, awkward history that they have. Plus, Cole hurt her pretty badly in that interaction. And so she is very mad at him, very, very hurt, and doesn't want to be vulnerable with him anymore. So it's them trying to work through some of their issues, plus Cole working through a lot of his issues with PTSD. Turns out he has a pretty serious physical injury as well that we find out later on in the book that he is hidden from everybody in his life. So nobody except his mother knows about it. And so it's following their relationship, and then him also having issues with violent riding as a jockey because his father was a jockey and died because he fell off his horse and was trampled during a race. So he has a lot of PTSD from that as well. So it's them trying to work through their relationship and also progressing the story at Gold Rush Ranch and the furthering of that ranch and trying to bring its name back up after the grandfather who died at the beginning of the first book. He kind of sullied the name of their racing horses and stuff. Because he was doing some illegal betting and some other illegal things. So I enjoyed the second book in the series. I don't remember if I liked it more than the first one or not. I rated the first book 3.75 and I rated this one 4.25. So I did like it a little bit more than the first book, and I definitely will be continuing this series. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the other books that I read this month that were not part of Aurelium. This month for the Homey and Homely Book Club, which is Lindsay from She Is Booked and Busy on YouTube, her book club. For this month, we read The Favorites by Lane Fargo, and I really enjoyed this book. So I listened to it on audio, and it had multiple narrators, had a full cast, and I really enjoyed this book. So we are introduced to our female and male main characters, Kat and Heath. They are ice dancers, and their goal, at least Kat's goal, is to go to the Olympics and to win the Olympics. And this is their story growing up when they met and they were very young. They're both poor, and Heath was an orphan and was in foster care. And Kat only had her father and her brother, and they were not very well off. And so this is the story of them and how they met and growing up and them skating together as partners. And then as they grow up, their journey to compete and skate and get to the Olympics. And there are ups and downs, and there are people that they meet. And so they end up being coached by Sheila Lynn, who is a previous Olympic gold winner. And she is very tough on them. And Sheila also has two twins, a boy and a girl, and they are also competitors. So Bella and Garrett, they are competing against Kate and Heath. And they end up becoming friends, and they end up, partner swaps and other drama that happens and backstabbing, and some of it, how it went down, kind of reminded me of Nancy Kerrigan and Tanya Harding with the whole skating drama, trying to hurt each other, trying to sabotage each other, that sort of thing. So this story happens in an interview style, very similar to Daisy Jones and the Six and how that audiobook was. Full cast of narrators, and they have interviews, and they're all kind of coming in and out telling the stories as these people are being interviewed. So I really did enjoy the book. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the ups and downs. I liked the author's writing. So I ended up giving this book 4 stars. So really enjoyed it. Would definitely recommend it. I really enjoyed the audiobook. Super easy to listen to, and it was a good one. So next I listened to Atomic Habits by James Clear. So this is a self-help book. and it's about how to create habits in your life. If there is something that you want to incorporate into your day-to-day life or into your weekly life, the different strategies that you can use to incorporate these habits into your life. This book had some really good points. It had some very good suggestions and strategies on what to do. However, a lot of it didn't really apply to me, as most of the things that he was suggesting I actually already do in my day-to-day life. And so there wasn't a whole lot that I could add. However, I have been starting to read my Bible more consistently throughout the week. And so this has helped me create a strategy in order to make that an actual habit. So one of the strategies that the author points out is, after you finish this task, then I will do this task. So having the habit you want to form happen directly after a habit that you already do. So in my case, it's after dinner, I will then read my Bible. So that means, okay, once dinner's over, then I do this. So it helps you better remember to actually do that thing that you want to do. So I enjoyed it. I liked it. The message that the author was trying to get across was a good one. And I don't think I was the exact target audience for it, since I already do a lot of the things that he was suggesting. But I did end up giving that book 4 stars just because I liked it, and I think it would help a lot of people. So Atomic Habits was on my TBR for May. However, my library hold came in a little bit early, and it was the Skip the Line copy, and you only have that copy for 7 days. So I went ahead and just listened to Atomic Habits while I had it, since my normal hold at the library would not be in time for me to actually listen to it in the month of May, because I think it had like 6 or 7 weeks before it would be available. So I went ahead and did the Skip the Line copy and just listened to it in April instead. So I'm a little bit ahead of my TBR for May. So after that, I listened to Crazy Love by Francis Chan, and this is a Christian nonfiction book. So it's basically how to become closer to God. He talks a lot in this book about having a lukewarm faith. You know, you go to church every week. It's your habit. You know, it's part of your routine. You go to church every week, but then throughout the week you just live and just day to day without ever thinking about God or without ever turning to God, and you know, not really dedicating your life to God. So he talks a lot about how to be more mindful of having the Lord in your life, and how to not have a lukewarm faith. So I did really enjoy that book, and I'm hoping that I will be able to use some of the things that the author talked about in that book. Then I listened to a lot of audiobooks this month, obviously. So I ended up giving Crazy Love 4 stars. Now, after Crazy Love, I listened to Tom Felton's autobiography, Beyond the Wand. And I really enjoyed this story. So I am a huge Harry Potter fan. I loved all of the books. I watch all of the movies all the time. I just started the movies last weekend again. So I'm on Goblet of Fire right now. But I really, really enjoyed the series. So that was the main draw of me picking up this autobiography. And listening to it on audio with Tom Felton narrating it was a really great experience. I enjoyed listening to his voice, reading his own story. So this starts off right as Tom's acting career is kicking off. So it introduces his family, his brothers. He's the youngest of 4 boys, and then his parents, a little bit about their lives growing up, a little bit about his brothers, and then how his acting career started, and the different projects that he was on before Harry Potter. And then all the people who influenced his life and made him a better actor or gave him tips and tricks throughout the years. And then he spoke a lot about Harry Potter and the different actors who were in that, who he at first was intimidated by, and who was so funny, and who was so nice, and who was such a great character. I love the bits where he's talking about Alan Rickman being Snape, and he's standing in line in the cafeteria in his full Snape robe, just waiting with his tray. He has some really great stories behind the scenes while they were filming Harry Potter, and the different ways that they filmed things, and the reactions from the kids, and how the director was so great working with the kids, and he knew how to work with the kids, and you know, what a great experience it was for him. And then after his life after Harry Potter, and how he thought he would be so well known, and he was to a certain extent, but then he also wasn't, and you know, trying to deal with going out in public and people recognizing him, and the different struggles with that, and the different struggles with trying to get more acting jobs and auditioning and that sort of thing, you know, relationship issues. He did have some substance abuse issues, so he talks about that as well, and wraps up the book a little bit after he goes through rehab and deals with his substance abuse. So I really did enjoy his memoir and his story, and the Harry Potter aspect really added a lot for me because I am a huge Harry Potter fan. So I gave that book 4 stars. Those are the different books that I read and listened to throughout the month of April. I also did promise in my last wrap-up video that I would talk about Lessons in Chemistry as soon as I finished it. So I've ended up finishing it on April 1st. I only had like 40 minutes left to listen to the audiobook. So I didn't actually finish that until after I had already filmed my wrap-up video for March. But I ended up giving Lessons in Chemistry 4.25 stars. So I really, really enjoyed that book. I enjoyed the story, and I enjoyed the characters. And Elizabeth Zott being a chemist and in the scientific world, and, you know, conducting her research and raising a child from the man she loves, who had a tragic accident, and you know, trying to give women in the 60s more of a voice. You're not just there to take care of the house and take care of the kids. Like, you have a voice, you can do whatever you want to. So I really enjoyed her attitude and her demeanor towards things, and the way she presented herself. I know that the Elizabeth Zott's character in this book has had a little bit of controversy behind it, but I really related to that since I am also in the scientific field, and I really enjoyed how she presented herself and her life and her accomplishments, and how she wanted women to be recognized for what they actually contribute and what they can do. So I just wanted to come back and let you guys know that I did really enjoy that book, and I would definitely recommend it. I really liked the audiobook as well. I enjoyed the narrator, so definitely a plus listening to the audiobook. So I ended up finishing 10 books in the month of April. I'm not counting Lessons in Chemistry as one of those 10 because I finished a majority of the book in March. So I finished 10 books in April, and I really loved all of them. So let's talk about the books that were on my TBR that I did not get to. Just because of Magical Readathon and how the library holds worked out, I didn't quite get to everything. So for my physical reads, I did not get to Cloud Cuckoo Land, which was one of the Read Across America picks from the Spinning Wheel. And I also did not get to Academy, which was a shelf pick. So this will go back on the shelves, and hopefully I will get it read soon because I've heard good things about this duology. And then as far as audiobooks, I did not get a chance to listen to Slow Dance by Rainbow Rowell or to a Kate Quinn book. So unfortunately, those will remain on the spinner wheels to hopefully be picked again soon. Let me know down below if you've read any of these books and you liked them or didn't like them, or any of your thoughts, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.